Leipzig Central Train Station. It opened in December 1915 at the outset of the First World War. When it opened, the Hauptbahnhof was the largest terminus station in Europe, and still is today. Remarkably, it was built as a co-venture of the Kingdom of Saxony and the Kingdom of Prussia, unheard of in Imperial Germany at the time. Leipzig has been Europe's crossroads of trade, travel, and exchange for centuries, long before rail travel arrived. This station catapulted Leipzig into the modern age. Fittingly, Friedrich List, but not that Friedrich List, is memorialized here in the main hall. This List was an economist and an early advocate for a national German railway network. By the early 20th century, Leipzig's centuries-old role as a crossroads of trade had become a crossroads of rail, and this massive station was built to display the city's confidence. Step outside the station and Leipzig immediately begins to explain itself. This was a city built on trade. And by the early 20th century, streets like this were lined with the headquarters of publishers, merchants, and exhibition houses, serving Leipzig's international trade fairs. And at the end of this street stands one of Leipzig's oldest and most important landmarks, St. Nicholas Church. The Nikolaikirche has stood on this site in one form or another since the 12th century. For most of its history, it was simply the civic church of Leipzig's merchants. But in the 20th century, it became something else entirely. Inside, the church doesn't look like what most people would expect. Much of what we see today, however, is from the 18th century. The unusual palm-shaped columns and ceiling decorations from the 18th century give the interior a surprisingly light, airy, and almost theatrical atmosphere. Johann Sebastian Bach, yes, that Bach, performed here regularly during his Leipzig years. In 1989, this sanctuary became a sanctuary for the citizens of Leipzig, protesting the government of socialist East Germany. The Monday demonstrations helped catalyze the end of communist rule in East Germany, and ultimately led to German reunification. The peaceful revolution began here. For centuries, this was a city of merchants, printers, musicians, and students, all moving through streets just like these. Step a little further into the historic center and Leipzig begins to sound different. Even today, street performers echo this past. This music reminds me of one of the last times I was in Leipzig. It was during a Renaissance fair in 1996. This bronze, the step of the century, is considered one of the most important sculptures produced in East Germany. Today it stands in front of a museum dedicated to life in the former East Germany. By the 17th century, Leipzig's merchants were important enough to build their own stock exchange, one of the earliest in Central Europe. And just in front of the old exchange is a reminder of Leipzig's literary and university status. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe studied in Leipzig as a young man. In this shopping arcade, one of many throughout Leipzig's Old Town, is Auerbach's Keller, one of the city's oldest dining establishments, and a favorite haunt of Goethe during his student years. Goethe later set a famous scene from Faust here, where his protagonist rides a wine barrel down the stairs into the cellar. And like many before us, Auerbach's is our lunch stop for the day. Just outside the old city hall is Leipzig's Marktplatz, the center of the city's civic life for more than 500 years. It's only a short walk past more historic facades to another of Leipzig's most important landmarks. For many visitors, this is the place most closely associated with Leipzig itself. This is the Thomaskirche. For nearly 300 years, this church has been inseparable from the legacy of Johann Sebastian Bach. Bach served here as cantor from 1723 to 1750. During those years, he composed and performed some of the most important sacred music of Western tradition. Right here in front of the altar is Bach's final resting place.
Allmächtiger Gott, du hast uns gestärkt durch das Mahl deines Sohnes. Er ist das Brot des Lebens, mache uns bereit.
Nearly 3 centuries later, this church remains what it has always been, a living place of worship. Leipzig was long a center of learning, trade, and publishing. Bach helped establish Leipzig as a center of music. And music like this continues to fill the space today. On the other end of the main pedestrian zone, Leipzig begins to transform into its modern incarnation. Created in the final decades of East Germany, these figures are a reminder that Leipzig has long been a city shaped as much by ideas as by trade and music. Today, the Skyline reflects a very different chapter in the city's history. This modern structure, St. Paul's, serves as both a church and a ceremonial hall for the University of Leipzig. This is the original Church of St. Paul, as depicted in 1839, a church dating back to the 13th century. In 1968, the East German government destroyed the original church. This demolition reflected the regime's efforts to reshape Leipzig to match the socialist future. This is Augustusplatz. It's one of the largest public squares in all of Germany, and it remains one of the cultural centers of modern Leipzig, home to Leipzig's Opera House, and host to seasonal festivals throughout the year. And across the square stands the Gewandhaus, built in 1981, home of one of Europe's most respected orchestras. You can almost make out the massive mural through the glass facade. It's one of the largest in Europe. In front of the Gewandhaus stands the Mendebrunnen, the largest fountain in Leipzig. It was completed in 1886. Today, the square brings together nearly every part of Leipzig's identity: university, music, public life, trade, and memory. And like so many visitors before us, our time in Leipzig begins and ends at the Hauptbahnhof.